Breakfast with Dominic King. BBC Radio Kent.
Good morning. Now, over the last 10 years, more than 56,000 people have been physically injured in car crashes in Kent. But what about the mental impact? 6 years ago this week, mum of four, Becky Rumans, jumped into her car to collect her daughter from football training. It was the last time she would drive. Becky was involved in a crash which wasn't her fault, and although her physical injuries healed, severe post-collision PTSD has prevented Becky ever being able to get behind the wheel. Our reporter Joe Palmer has been hearing her story.
I can remember light and extraordinary noise. I can only remember hearing screaming. The pain was instant. The silence that followed was chilling, and I couldn't work out what had happened.
Becky had been hit by a drug driver. Her physical injuries slowly healed, but she still lives with the PTSD from that night.
The thing I'm always told is, you were so lucky. How did you walk away from that? I am incredibly lucky, I understand that, but it's had such a phenomenal, catastrophic effect on my actual life.
The man who caused the collision lost his licence for 20 months, but Becky says she can no longer drive. Loud noises, flashing lights, the sound of garden machinery can all trigger a panic attack.
There have been days where I couldn't open the curtains because I couldn't see cars come past my window. I have to work out if today's a day I can leave the house. And if I am going to leave the house, what direction am I going in? Is there a route that I can go away from the traffic? Really, really pre-plan every single thing. And it's exhausting.
Latest government figures reveal more than 128,000 people were injured in road accidents in 2024. But the Department for Transport don't collect any data on PTSD. Another driver, who we're calling Caroline, who lives in Kent, was clipped by a lorry as she overtook it on the M25.
Car began to spin. I was probably doing like 60, 70 miles an hour and literally moved in front of the lorry. The lorry was literally driving me sideways down the motorway, unaware that I was there.
Superficially, she walked away without a scratch, but the psychological impact remained.
So I was diagnosed with PTSD, and the alternative reality that I talk about is because the life that you used to know doesn't exist anymore. So I've driven for 30 years, quite carefree. I drive all over the country, and then suddenly I'd become somebody who wasn't able to do that anymore. So it's like you're living in the life of somebody different.
Caroline is back behind the wheel, but only during daylight hours, and she's had to flex her working times to accommodate this. The therapy and driving lessons it took to get there has cost thousands.
It's quite a lot of money, and I'm aware that I'm very privileged, that I've got the money to do that, but there'll be a lot of people that need help, and they just won't be able to pay out for that.
Becky and Caroline hope by sharing their stories, they'll give other victims the confidence to seek help.
I really wanted for the victims to have a little bit more of a voice, and for just one person to be able to realise that they're not alone, then it's worth doing.
Joe Palmer with that report. Here on The Breakfast Show this morning, I'd like to hear your story. Have you had a bad experience? An experience so bad for you that you had to quit driving? What did it take, maybe, to get behind the wheel again if you have returned to your car? Share your story with me this morning on 08000 321 333. Start your message with the word Kent. We're listening into that report from Joe is Carmine Mastro Giacomo, who is a driving instructor, trained life coach and cognitive behavioural therapist from CMS Drive Therapy, provide assistance to drivers in Kent. And I think just hearing that, Carmine, listening to those voices of those two women who have had such an awful time, it's no wonder that they find it difficult to even think about getting behind a wheel again.
Good morning, Dom. Yeah. No, absolutely. And this is a lot more common than what we think. And it's a real struggle for people that have been involved in a major accident. It's a huge step to even contemplate getting back in behind the wheel again.
Debilitating is a word that is often used, and you don't quite know whether it really means that someone has gone right to the point of not being able to do something. But in these particular cases, the fear factor that comes, can you kind of guide us through that, with the work that you do with those who come to you and say, look, I want to get back in, but I just don't know how?
Yeah, so I mean, Becky and Caroline's story is very common to the story that we hear from a lot of our clients, even though obviously everyone's journey is slightly different. They're involved in some sort of major accident, and then from that point onwards, the way they look at driving completely changes, and the amount of fear that's involved is horrendous. Just for some people, just getting in the car and sitting behind the wheel with the engine switched on is a huge thing.
And what are they fearing? Are they fearing that something could happen again? Is it the whole feel of the car? What is it?
Sure. So it's very different for each individual, but for a lot of people, it's the fear of being involved in another accident. It's a fear of not being in control of a similar situation happening again. It can be a number of different things.
Given that this could impact on someone's ability to go to work, quite frankly, or their just life in general, getting from A to B, depending on where they're living. They might live in a rural area where there aren't many bus routes each and every day. The getting back into the car would be something that would obviously change their life and help them to do the normal things they do. But what do you say to people who come to you and say, look, I just can't imagine getting back in again, but what do I do?
Well, like you say, there needs to be a real strong motivator for that client to really want to overcome it. And you mentioned about going to work. For some people, they have no choice, no option but to go to work. And what we tend to do is, we use a real multifaceted approach. We use some CBT, we use some coaching, we also offer in-car support as well. But we always say to clients, when we set them a driving plan to work towards, is start really small, really small, and then build up.
It was interesting years ago when you went across the Dartford tunnel, through the Dartford tunnel. For some people, that was something they didn't want to do. Some people just really hate tunnels and enclosed spaces. Yeah. And there were actually people who would help you go through the tunnel, who would sit in the car with you and get you to the other end. These days, we've got such busy roads, Carmine, so many people. Do you think we as other fellow motorists need to take a bit of play a part in here? If we see someone who's going a bit slow, or they seem to be going around a corner quite cautiously, do we need to kind of just chill out a bit, actually, and say, there might be a reason for why they're driving the way they are?
Yeah, you're spot on, Dom. I think a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us get into the car and we're in our own cocoon of a metal object, and we assume that everyone else is just driving confidently or happily. But you're right. I think giving people a bit of patience, showing consideration to other road users as well, because we just simply don't know why that car in front of you may be driving a bit slower, why they might be taking their time to come out at a junction, why they may be hesitant to overtake. It doesn't necessarily mean they're dangerous, it just might mean they need a bit more time.
Hey, thanks for being with us this morning. That's Carmine Mastrogiacomo, a driving instructor, trained life coach and cognitive behavioural therapist from CMS Drive Therapy. What about you? What did you do? What was your first step to get back into the car? Maybe you had a bad experience. Maybe you were sideswiped. I've had that happen to me before, just on a normal road, where a lorry came down to the right-hand side of me and just took off my wing mirror. But the shudder it made in the car, and that feeling of being out of control. I was going at a normal speed, but the lorry on the right-hand side, the van, big van, just didn't. What did it take to get you back behind the wheel? Share your story with me this morning on 08000 321 333. Start your message with the word Kent.